Hi, welcome everybody. We have another great webinar for you today brought to you by the Mr. Cannabis Law team. My name is Amanda Barton. I am a partner with Mr. Cannabis Law. I'm an attorney practicing in the state of Florida. I've been practicing for a little over 10 years now, primarily in the regulated markets. Prior to getting involved in cannabis, I was in regulated alternative finance industry. At our firm, Mr. Cannabis Law, we are a full service law firm that helps different cannabis and psychedelic companies navigate the industry. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions you may have. I would like to also introduce Andy Sick, who is of counsel with our law firm. Mr. Sick is licensed to practice in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. He is our local expert on the licensing matters. We are very lucky to have him here today. Andy, thank you for joining us. Can you give us a little brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Amanda. Like Amanda said, my name's Andy Sick. I'm an attorney here in Connecticut. I'm also licensed in New York and New Jersey. I am of counsel to Mr. Cannabis Law, helping them with licensing matters and other general counsel matters. And prior to joining Mr. Cannabis Law, I had my own law firm, which I still do, which does startup practices and ongoing general counsel work and things along those lines. And I've been practicing for about 15 years. So we're really happy to have you all here at the webinar and just be discussing Connecticut's new adult use rules that are coming into play here very, very soon.
Yes, so we have, if you have missed our other webinars, we have already had some webinars discussing the adult use regulations in both New York and New Jersey. Connecticut recently joined its counterparts in passing adult use. Andy, what are the different types of licenses in Connecticut for adult use?
Sure. So Connecticut's going to be a little bit different than New York, New Jersey. Connecticut's actually going to have 9 different types of adult use licenses. There will be a retailer license, which sells adult use cannabis only directly to consumers. There's going to be a hybrid retailer, which is kind of a mix of a medical cannabis dispensary and an adult use recreational cannabis dispensary. So it's combining the two. Well, there'll also be a cultivator license, which allows those growing more than 15,000 square feet of having more than 15,000 square feet of grow space. There's also going to be a micro cultivator license for smaller grow operations, which allows grow feet between 2,000 and 10,000 square feet. There's going to be product manufacturers. That's another license. Food and beverage manufacturers, product packagers, a delivery service. And finally, there's going to be a transporter license. So there's a distinction between the delivery service and the transporter license. The delivery service delivers directly to consumers, and transporter goes between these different other licenses. So it's not to the consumers. So that's the general lay of the land of the type of licenses that Connecticut's going to offer up.
So what's great about this is it's a horizontal market as compared to Florida, which is a fully integrated vertical market, meaning that everybody, any applicant has to do everything from seed to sale. So if you just want to apply to have a dispensary, you can apply just for a retail. If you are an entrepreneur just getting into this space and interested in cultivation and think you just want to start with maybe a smaller operation, you can apply just for the micro cultivation license. So the way they have it set up is great and offers a lot of flexibility for you to just get into one particular piece of the pie. So if somebody did want to get involved in the different pathways, what are the different ways that someone could get involved in getting a cannabis business license in Connecticut?
Yeah, sure. So Connecticut's really unique in this way, in that there's not just one standard application process. Basically, they have 7 routes a group can take to get a license in any one of those areas. The first major one is a conversion, where there's existing medical marijuana dispensaries can convert their facilities to have those hybrid license that I mentioned earlier. So they could sell both to medical marijuana patients and to recreational patients. And the same thing applies to producers, cultivators on that large scale that already have medical marijuana licenses. Other types of routes here are there's equity joint ventures that you can do, which is 50% owned by a social equity applicant and a existing medical marijuana producer or a dispensary. Then there's another type, which is a social equity partner, which is a 65% owned business, which is controlled by a social equity applicant. And we'll go into what social equity applicants mean. I know it's a little confusing, but these things will really assist in your application if you can have some of these members on your team. There's social equity cultivators. There is social equity micro cultivators. And finally, there's the lottery, which is the major approach most people are going to take. And there's going to be, the lottery is interesting in that there's going to be two separate lotteries going on. First, there's going to be a social equity lottery, which anyone that can fall into the social equity category goes into. And Connecticut is divvying up their licenses. 50% of them are going to social equity applicants, and 50% of them are intended for non-social equity applicants. So with the social equity lottery, with these lotteries, there's two of them. If you do the social equity lottery, you get chosen, then you're on the path to getting the license. If you're not chosen in that social equity lottery, then you get put in the other pile of the non-social equity folks. So you kind of get two bites at the apple to try to get these licenses if you're a social equity applicant and go the lottery approach. So we can get into the lottery a little bit more, but that's the general gist of how it's all going to work and be set up.
No, I think that's a really key factor, is that understanding the lottery system, because it is a lot different than we're seeing in New York and New Jersey. Actually, New York, we don't really know yet. We're still waiting on those final regulations to come out. So we'll see. Maybe they'll do a lottery-based system.
Yeah.
But New Jersey is not. New Jersey is doing it actually based on a priority scheme, and they're doing applications on a rolling basis. So it is a little bit different than the New Jersey approach. But it is important to realize, with a lottery, how that works. So when they actually submit their application, are they even being looked at, or do they immediately go into the lottery system?
Basically, you're going to have to submit something. We're not 100% sure what that is. That should be coming out literally any day now. And so you'll have to submit something. It'll get but then you'll be put in the lottery, and
right,
then,
you go into your buckets. They classify you into a bucket.
Exactly. And once you're in that bucket, then that bucket is, those lottery buckets are only open for 90 days. So anyone that wants to apply, unlike New Jersey, which is first in time, kind of gets there. In Connecticut, everyone has 90 days, and then that round of the lottery is closed. So, after that, you'd get pulled out of that bucket if you're one of the ones selected, and then your application proceeds from there. So there is going to be some initial stuff that's required, but it's not going to be the full intensive application, which if you're selected, you'll have to get going, the second you found out that you're chosen.
No, that's very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing. Now, have they announced yet how many, different licenses are going to be issuing yet?
No. As a matter of fact, they haven't. They were supposed to announce it already, although they asked for a little bit of a delay, and they got that delay. But basically, that should be coming out literally any day now too. What we're expecting is that's going to be announced, and then from the day that number is announced, the state has 30 days to get the lottery going. So we expect those numbers to come out, like I said, any day. Then 30 days from then, kind of looking towards the end of January, we will have the lottery will begin, the lottery period opens. So then people will need to be getting their applications in. So it's going to happen really fast, and it's all coming up. So we're all just kind of dependent or waiting to see how big they're going to make this market.
Interesting. It's definitely exciting time. And something to pay attention to, like you mentioned, is this upcoming deadline. I mean, they'll start, like, we could see the application process open towards the end of January, and then they have 90 days to submit the application to get into the first round.
That's right. Yeah, they'll have 90 days to submit it. And again, there'll be some procedural things here, because if they're doing this, if they stick with this two lottery system where it's first social equity applicants, then the other applicants, it's going to have to be the social equity applicants go first, then the other ones. So it might be the first lottery period opens up at the end of January, that goes for 90 days, and then the next one opens up. That being said, it doesn't seem like they have to be tied to that. It seems like they could just be running both simultaneously. Everyone has that 90-day period, and then, if they'll do the lottery selection at the end of that first for social equity, yeah, and then they'll put all those other people into the pile. So I think that's the more likely scenario of what's going to go down. And so, yeah, everyone would just kind of have to be ready to go as soon as the end of January comes.
Now, is there any advantage, like let's say the applications open on February 1st versus applying on the 79th day? Is there a difference between those two?
No, there's really not much of a difference. That being said, though, there could be technicalities with your application that get rejected. There could be things along those lines. And, let's say you didn't fill something out correctly, it gets sent back and you don't get it back in time. Perhaps, that's the issue. But unlike New Jersey, as long as you have everything in by the deadline, there is no difference between if you apply on the first day or the last day.
Gotcha. But we are recommending that people apply during the first round, rather wait for subsequent rounds, right? There could be, they do anticipate having multiple rounds of applications.
Oh yeah. And perhaps I misheard your question, but yeah, like there does appear to be, there are going to be multiple rounds after this first round. It seems like it. But that being said, like, we super recommend, if you're interested in this, we recommend that you do this right away, because there are going to be restrictions on the number of licenses, both from a state level and at the local level. So like municipalities actually have built into the law, the size of the municipality is restricting how many dispensaries and grow operations can actually be in there. So if you just say, oh, I'll wait to the next round or something like that, you very well might miss your chance to be able to get one of the license. Even though the state opens it up, it might not be open at the local level. So that's something that we've also seen in Jersey, where there's kind of a state level restriction, but it's not that tight. But then when it gets down to the local level, there's all these other things that limit the number of operations that can be in existence there.
Yeah, that's a great point. And another reason to start working on your application now is to identify which municipality you want to be in. And I know we're going to cover this in a lot more depth later in the webinar. But yeah, starting to plan now for your application is very, very important, because there are a lot of factors you have to take into consideration, a big one being the municipality. I also want to echo what you just mentioned as far as the application process itself. We did see recently New Jersey opened up to start accepting applications for cultivators. And we did hear that there were a lot of issues with the state website as far as it crashing because too many people, were logging on, or there were complications. So, you definitely don't want to wait till the last day and find out there's a huge computer glitch or something that, that stops you from being able to get into that first round.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Absolutely. Good point.
What are some of the other key features of the Connecticut's cannabis licensing program?
Sure. Let's see. There's some interesting things here. Like, I've probably touched on a few of these, but just to, like, half of the recreational marijuana stores will be allocated to social equity applicants. So it's a really big number. That's a lot. That's really showing Connecticut's commitment to the social equity component of this legislation. I mentioned that existing adult use marijuana producers and dispensaries don't have to go through the application process. So that's kind of interesting. They kind of have their own little back door to get through and kind of get an existing license, get their own license without having to apply in the normal way. It seems much quicker. You don't have to wait for the lottery, all that stuff. The fees are high for those folks. Like, if you have an existing medical marijuana dispensary and you want to convert, that's $1 million if you have a dispensary, or $3 million if you're a cultivator.
Wow.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
easier, but expensive.
Yeah. But you know, a lot of the folks doing this are the bigger players. So, and they already got, they know how big this market's going to be. So that, that's not a huge problem. Interestingly, if you partner with one of those social equity businesses that we mentioned before, as an existing medical marijuana dispensary or producer, then your fees can get cut in half. So that's
That's unique. I
Yeah,
haven't seen that in many
yeah,
states. So that's very unique to Connecticut.
totally, and save a $1.5 million. That's not a bad deal there. See what else is kind of unique to Connecticut. We talked about so there's a two-step license structure. So basically, you'll get a provisional license if you're selected out of the application pool, if you're one of the few selected out of the lottery. And then that'll allow you to apply for a final license. So you get the provisional license, you have some time to prepare your final application, then you can apply for the final license. And then you have time after you apply to set up your operations. This kind of the part of the reasoning behind this is so people can get this provisional license without locking up real estate or buying buildings or whatever the case may be. It allows you to kind of save on those capital investments until you have a better idea that, okay, like I can get this license as long as I do everything that needs to be done, and cross all the I's and dot all the I's and cross the T's. Yeah. So, and that being said, there's still a lot of complicated stuff going to the application, so you can't guarantee it, but it just gives you a better way to do some business planning.
That makes sense, because we also have seen in other states, the lottery system, there's lawsuits filed and actually gets dragged out for years. So, you don't necessarily want to enter into a lease and have to start paying, monthly rent obligations if you're not even sure you can operate yet. So I think it's great how they did set it up that way.
Absolutely.
And that's very good point to mention.
Yeah. And yeah, that's those are some of the key things that seem a little bit unique. There's some initial, there's other things related to social equity applicants, getting awarded initial cultivation licenses. And then there's, we also talked about the lottery component, which is unique to Connecticut, but those are the major big things that are different from other states.
And just to reiterate, and not to, we'll probably reiterate this a lot of time, but it is great to be a social equity applicant because you do get those two bites of the apple, like you mentioned. Like first you get to go in the lottery just for social equity applicants, but then you also join the lottery with the remaining applicants that don't necessarily fit the social equity criteria. So we really, if it's possible, and we'll talk about what those requirements are in a few minutes. But if there's any way that you can qualify as a social equity applicant, it really does behoove you to do so. And something else, I was so excited to jump right into all of this content. I did forget to mention to our guests and attendees, if you have questions, please don't wait till the end. Feel free to drop them down into the chat section or the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, where we'll try to incorporate and answer them in real time to the extent we're able to. And if not, we'll answer any questions at the end of the broadcast. But yeah, welcome everybody and feel free to interact. We want to try to make this as positive as possible.
And I'd also like to just add that this is also not legal advice. This is just part of the disclaimer that we have to provide that, we're here to give you this webinar and things like that, but we're not your attorneys. We're happy to be your attorneys if you'd like to retain us, but this is not to be considered legal advice for purposes of this webinar.
Very important disclosure. Thank you very much for remembering that. It's usually second nature. Definitely forgot this time. I'll just put a screen up before we broadcast this. But yes, just by virtue of participating in this panel and watching what we have to say, it does not create an attorney-client relationship. However, as Andy said, we're happy to represent you if you would like to reach out after this and discuss engagement. Now, moving on a little bit, we did kind of go through the lottery. You have mentioned like social equity counsel. Can you kind of explain what the Social Equity Council is and kind of what's its purpose?
Yeah, sure. So the Social Equity Council was created as part of this legislation, and the whole idea here is to help realize the social equity goals of the legislation. So it's like a separate entity that exists under it exists in parallel to the governing body that's handling the marijuana regulations. So it's the Department of Consumer Protection. So there exists within it just for legislative purposes, but they really have their own power here, and they are giving a lot of advice and guidance as to how this whole rollout is going to occur. So the way that they're doing this is what they're trying to do is to ensure that this adult use program is equitable and benefits those who were most impacted by the war on drugs. So that's a lot of what their advice is geared towards. And so it's nice to kind of have this outside body that can interact with the other body that is like, hey, wait, let's tweak the rules a little bit here so that there's a little bit more fairness to some of the folks that might not be otherwise able to get involved that were disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. And
I do like that it's, sorry for interrupting, but I do like that it's a separate body, right? In a lot of the other states we're seeing while there is a big component, a social equity component, we're seeing it in the main regulatory agency or body, and it's not really its own standalone thing. So I really do like how Connecticut's doing it by having a whole standalone entity just looking out for diversity and social equity.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's super unique, and it actually just little things that I'm noticing how they're interacting and how they're, they'll slow up the process a little bit, but it'll be like, hey, look, we just need to tweak this so that applicants have a little bit longer time to apply. Like it's not so fast. So I think it went from 60 to 90 days, things along those lines, and you're seeing them just kind of massage the rules in certain places where it would clearly be helpful to these social equity applicants and people that could use that assistance.
Yeah, some of these applications do require, even though they seem simple, I mean, when they ask you for 10 years, where you've lived the last 10 years, where you've worked the last 10 years, it's a lot of data to gather, especially if it's someone, that has a full-time job or that's working in another career field right now and just looking to get into the industry. So a little extra time is actually very helpful to social equity applicants and all applicants.
Yeah, sure.
But that's great that they did that.
Yeah, and one other little thing, just to kind of, as we start talking a little bit more about social equity stuff, it's the basic thing here is like it's determined by income, and then the second thing is like where you are a resident of, and if that residency has been determined by the council to be an area that was disproportionately impacted by the war.
Let's go ahead and jump right into that. Like, what do you need to have in order to qualify as social equity? You just touched on it, but let's go ahead and get into more specifics. What do you need to qualify for social equity?
Okay, so the criteria to be considered a social equity applicant is the cannabis business is at least 65% owned and controlled by individuals who there's a couple little factors here. Had an average household income of less than 300% of the state median income over the last 3 tax years, and was a resident of a disproportionately impacted area for not less than 5 of the past 10 years, or was a resident of a disproportionately impacted area for not less than 9 years prior to them turning 18 years of age.
So basically it looks at the last little bit of time, whether you've lived there recently or you also can possibly fit under the residency requirement if you grew up there.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So it's really 2-pronged. So first you have to have the owners, you have to have at least 65% of the owners, and those owners must meet the 2-prong test, which is both an income requirement and a residency requirement.
That's it. Absolutely. Yeah, you got it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's gonna be hard for a lot of people. 65% is a lot. Like, so in other states, we're seeing just one member, right? Like you have to have one social equity member or 50%, or the fact that 65, they really are seemingly focused on the intent, which is to give back to those people disproportionately impacted locally
Right.
within Connecticut. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's like a super large number for sure. And, they do have a smaller tier one, like, and it's called an equity joint venture, which is like more than 50% owned. So it doesn't have that high level of 65%, but you don't get the same.
you don't fit in that social equity bucket, do you?
Right.
For the
Right.
lottery purpose.
Right.
Okay. That was more of a question. Sorry, that wasn't really a statement. That was more of me asking you.
No, but you got it. You got it. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and I'm sorry, yeah, like why, since I'm there, I might as well just say a little bit more about these equity joint ventures. Like, so the ventures are for businesses that, that already have, so that relates to the ones that already have the medical marijuana programs. So it's like if there's an existing medical marijuana dispensary and they want to get together with a
social equity,
social equity person, but have them own less than 50% of something. They can even do a side business, like allowing them grow space inside their existing thing.
Interesting.
So it allows you not to go through the lottery and get these millions of dollars or $500,000 discounts by kind of sponsoring a social equity joint venture, with this social equity applicant that would qualify.
It's creative. I give it to the state of Connecticut. They're getting creative here. I like it.
And then there's you have to pay fees to the social equity council if you do that, but not a ton of people will fall into that category. The bigger category will be the general social equity applicants that require you to have the 65% ownership and then go into the lottery itself.
And this is, I'm pulling this out of thin air, and I did not ask you this ahead of time. So if you don't know off the top of your head, I don't mean to surprise you, but do you happen to know how many licensed medical marijuana companies there are in Connecticut roughly?
I don't.
And if you don't know, that's okay.
No, I don't. But like what I do know is there are 4 big operators.
Okay, gotcha.
That are kind of like running the show here right now. And, there's other people looking to get in. I don't know how many individual cultivation things they have. So I
gotcha.
For that. Yeah.
No. That kind of answers my question. Now, what happens, like we were talking about social equity. So I want to jump back a second and go back to a social equity applicant. Like, let's say a social equity applicant applies, they get priority, they go in that first bucket, they get under the lottery system, they get chosen for one of the licenses, they get a provisional license, they convert it to a full license. Are they stuck there, or can they sell their business?
Well, you're stuck there for a little bit. So basically it's like if a license gets awarded to a social equity applicant, you cannot sell it. You cannot sell it to someone other than another social equity applicant, someone that would qualify, because then you're kind of, if you did it another way, you'd be getting out of that bucket. But so there is some transferability, and that's and that only applies to the period of the provisional license and for the 3 years following your issuance of a regular license. So you can sell it, but it would have to be to someone else that hits that criteria. And then after 3 years, then you can sell it.
Wonderful. Okay. So you do have options if you do need to get out, but ideally you wait the 3 years and then you're not restricted to selling only to another social equity applicant. Right.
It seems a bit different than, let's say, New Jersey or some other states where they seem to have like these restrictions on sales that, that Connecticut's at least allowing a bit more transferability here,
Right. Because I think in New Jersey, I think it's stuck to the individual applicant for 2 years.
Right. I think you're right.
A year or 2 years.
Yeah. It all depends on how you look at the date, but basically.
Yeah. So that's good that they at least give an option to sell to another social equity member.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, as we mentioned, we really don't know yet what the applications look like, right? We're still waiting for the state to come out with those specific requirements for the initial application in order to qualify you to go into the lottery. But what type of anticipation do you, or what type of information do you anticipate the state will require?
Sure. So, it's going to be like a lot of the other applications that we do in other states. There's going to be things like you're going to have to be able to prove income. You'll have to, applicants must have like notarized proof of income letter plus supporting documentations like pay stubs, W-2s, Social Security stuff. And then you're also going to have to prove residency requirements, driver's license, Social Security cards, passports, things like that. You'll also need things like signed leases or titles to your house, things like that, school records, deeds.
And that's all to prove the residency requirement, correct?
Yeah, that's
that's
residency and income requirements. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then like in order to prove that if the business is at least 65% owned and controlled by someone who qualifies as a social equity applicant, you'll have to submit documentation from a list of about 30 other documents that they'll have, like, and that'll include like organizational charts, personal federal income tax returns, and a complete list of the owners and how much money they make, just to make sure that 65% is actually owned by someone who qualifies. And again, the other 35% can be owned by whoever, so that's not, not to dissuade certain folks in that thing. And you certainly can, and we encourage you to partner up with those folks because it really helps your chances,
Absolutely. And that's something our firm can actually help with. A lot of times that we can help connect individuals together and parties together. So, if you are looking for a social equity applicant, or if you're a social equity applicant that wants to be partnered up with somebody that already has cultivation or other experience in the cannabis space, reach out to us. Maybe there's some introductions we can make, and maybe we can assist in that way. We're not just a law firm. We're able to, being that we've operated in the cannabis space for quite some time, assisting other businesses, we do have a wide network, so we can offer a lot of like business, experience and introductions where possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good important point to make out. And then as you go through, there's going to be other documentation that's going to be required too. So and that's where we come in. We help get all this together, and then there's going to be applications that you're going to have to or business plans that you're going to have to put together. There's going to be like different statements of purposes and goals and details of how you'll achieve these different things, all as part of this thing that you have to have, which is a social equity plan. So, that's something that we would be able to help you put together and facilitate all the documentation that goes into that. Let's see. And there's other things too, like you'll have to, when we help with this too, we'll submit workforce development plans that answer questions about how you recruit and how you plan to hire, and the population, and how this all matches up with the populations targeted by the Social Equity Council. So, there's a commitment to the community as well in this stuff, and you have to demonstrate that in your application as a social equity applicant, and and also as one of the businesses that's going to be approved since like 50% of them are going to social equity targeted areas.
Yes. Yeah. So there is, it's not just like throwing your hat into the ring. You do have to provide some information on the front end. So we do, again, this is another reason why we encourage you to start preparing now, because it's not just a simple one-page application to start. There is going to be some data collection on the front end, and it will take a while for you to gather the necessary documentation to support your application. It's from my understanding, this has to be submitted, a lot of this right in the beginning when you first apply for the lottery. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Right. We'll see. We're waiting on application details to come out, so they might change their mind. But from what's come out thus far, that's kind of the feeling that we get.
Right. Otherwise, and that's what I would expect too. At least like some of this initial documentation will be required. They're giving you 90 days to do it, but they also want to make sure that the people that are applying are legit. So this lottery is legit. So they're gonna, they're gonna need to like go through and have a commitment to do it. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
They want to see that you really want it. So
Yeah.
interesting. So you've kind of already touched on this a little bit, but I'll just flat out ask: do existing medical marijuana dispensaries have an advantage in this process?
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. They have like a huge advantage, and we haven't seen this in any other states, especially like Jersey or New York. Haven't even touched on anything like this, but they don't have, like we were mentioning earlier, they don't even have to go through the normal application process. They can just kind of like slide right in there, convert to having a hybrid operation where they sell to both medical customers and non-medical customers. So it's really, I mean, it's for them, it's an amazing opportunity, and like and also like the time frames truncated a lot then too, because you're not waiting for applications, you're not waiting to see if people don't complete their applications and then you get added on as another person. Like, you're just going through, filling out the forms, and then you're off to the races. So it's a really big thing for these existing dispensaries. And let me see, it also the law allows current medical marijuana dispensaries to apply for the hybrid and then start selling recreational cannabis products within 30 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and
30
then
days after application or acceptance of their
I
application.
imagine it'd have to be after acceptance, right? Like,
Right.
but
I'm just thinking they're going to get the system might get bogged down a little bit. So 30 days is pretty quick for them to actually grade the application.
I think there's only 18. I think there's only 18 dispensaries. So
okay.
It's not a crazy number, but it's like, the tie-in between these dispensaries and the producers. I mean, they've been running the market here, so, and the producers are going to be the ones supplying everybody. So, and then
sorry to interrupt. Now, what I'm curious to see, and I know you probably, I'm sure you don't have the answer to this, is I'm excited to see whether or not those conversions count towards the caps the state puts in place. So if they like cap how many cultivation or retailer, like, do those conversions count against that cap?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know the answer to that.
No, I don't think they've said. So that's kind of that's just like a note for the future that I'm kind of excited, in a nerdy way, excited to see, like, does that count or not? Because that's really an advantage. If not only they get, basically graded first and they get to skip the line, but if they, or get them before anyone else, and it goes against the pool that other applicants would be applying for.
Right. And then, there's another benefit too, is I don't think they have to deal with the towns too, because they're already in existence here, so I don't think that counts as a cap towards the number that each municipality is going to allow. So you also make out well on the municipality end too. It's like kind of get two for one. Yeah,
that's true. Unless they're expanding in a place that they don't currently have any locations in a municipality.
Yeah.
Interesting. My guess is they're going to have a whole completely different application for those conversions.
Oh yeah, I definitely think so too. Absolutely, it's going to be a whole different thing.
Yeah. Are there restrictions on the number of licenses someone can hold? Like, I guess sorry for cutting you off. Yeah. I guess the first question is do you have to, like, let's say you get a retail license. Does that retail license allow you to open multiple facilities?
No, if you get a retail license, that'll allow you to open up one retail facility.
Okay, so if I want to open up 3, can I do that?
Well, not 3. You could 2? Open up 2. Yeah, you could do 2. So basically how it goes is, like, for a period of 2.5 years from the time these applications and stuff get rolling, you cannot hold more than 2 licenses in any one license category. So you could have other parts of the supply chain two, but you can't have 3 dispensaries. Now, that being said, after that period, the state can change or increase that number, which is very likely they will. At this point, it's about, preventing consolidation and allowing these new operators to exist and have this little incubation period for everyone to get going.
That's interesting. So I could have like 2 retail facilities and a cultivation facility, but
Yeah.
not 3 retail.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
And
interesting.
and it is interesting too, because it's like that's something that the other states around aren't necessarily doing, you know. They're putting a lot of like New Jersey isn't allowing um anyone, you can only have one license in New Jersey.
I think some of them you can have, like if they're right next to each other. So you can, I think, have like a cultivation and a manufacturing license because they're
Oh,
the
that's right. That's right.
2 pieces of the puzzle, like right next to each other. But you
Right,
can't
right.
do
The supply
cultivation
chain.
and retail. You
Right,
can't do
right,
both sides. It's either like the
right,
beginning, middle, or ends. Like they're very
right, right,
select
right,
over
right.
which ones you can combine together.
That's it. Yep, that's it.
But I
Yeah.
don't
So
remember how many, like for instance, in New Jersey, I don't remember off the top of my head if like, let's say you get a retail license, I think it allows you to open up to 3 stores. I don't really remember off the top of my head, but they did it a little differently in New Jersey
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, 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 for sure, for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it'll be
So
interesting to see how it all plays out here, you know, and then like, and how New York's going to do it too. You know, we don't know, but it seems like here it kind of allows, like, it allows space. It is going to allow vertical integration in that way. So, you know, if people want to come in and set up a big shop, they can do that, you know, and kind of own all those pieces of the supply chain. Whereas in like you said, in New Jersey, you know, you can have part of it, but you can't own top to bottom, you know.
right. Because they're trying to keep the big players out in that
Yeah.
regard. They are trying to break up the process so you can't be a controlling the
Right.
whole thing.
Right. Right.
But that's so and this is kind of going a little bit aloof, but it just raises the question, can you, so let's say I already know, and I already know I want to open up to retail. Does that mean I submit 2 applications? I wonder if
Yeah.
there's a limit on how, and I know we're waiting on those application requirements to come out. So I'm interested to know how many times people can apply.
Well, it doesn't seem to be a restriction on how often you can apply. It just seems like, you know, but I hear what you're saying. Like, can someone just fill up the application pool with their thing, you know? But then they're going to be looking at the ownership structures,
True.
and so, you know, it's going to be, and they're going to be making sure that everyone is in accordance with everything in there, you know. And so you're not going to just be able to just, you know,
I can't submit 100
create
applications.
1,000 applications. Amanda's got the market in Connecticut cornered. Yep.
Darn it. Oh, well, we're broadcasting this, so now everyone has my strategy.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Now, I'm sure we're going to see in the application requirements in the specifications they come out with some kind of cap on how many times you can apply, or you know, how many times you can be listed on someone's application.
Right, right. Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like, you know, your name cannot be mentioned more than like on 2 different applications for each level. You know what I mean?
We've seen that in other states.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. I think we're going to see something like that.
Let's see. Oh, you know, and there was one thing I wanted to bring up that I just really liked about Connecticut's legislation that I just thought was really unique and kind of special, is like for the micro cultivator licenses in Connecticut. It seemed like such a unique opportunity. So the micro cultivators in Connecticut, it's a pretty large size. So in New Jersey, the micro cultivator is 2,500 square feet, I believe, with maybe up to 1,000 plants a month. Here, the micro cultivator license are between 2,000 and 10,000 square feet. So it's
That's
pretty
a big
large
facility.
size. Yeah, it's definitely a large size. It's not necessarily that micro, you know. And under the micro cultivator license, you can grow, propagate, manufacture, package, label, sell to consumers via delivery service, not direct, but via delivery, and perform extraction all of your own. So you're almost getting like all of the licenses in one if you're doing this micro cultivator license. So it seems like a really kind of amazing, crazy opportunity that's built in there. And you know how there's been talk about New York doing a micro license that allows, that's a bit more like a microbrewery, you know, and that allows kind of all the whole process to be in one. And Connecticut went ahead and did that. It's interesting that it's in the micro cultivation category. So it's tied to you growing. but if you grow, then you can do all these things. So it's interesting how they're doing that.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think it gives a lot of good opportunities for the social equity applicants and for entrepreneurs who are just getting into the space. So it's almost like a mini vertical integration all in one license.
Absolutely. And yeah, so there's something really kind of cool and unique about that. And I also like how it is tied to the growing too. So it's like, all right, you gotta work with the plants, you gotta know what you're doing with the plants, and then you can do everything with it. So there's something kind of neat about that. And also how you can sell to consumers. Like you can use a delivery service to sell. So it's not this, you can have all those different parts of the supply chain. It's really cool.
We've actually seen in Florida, just taking an example from Florida, Florida only has 22 license holders. They're all vertically integrated, meaning they do everything from seed to sale, and they're big operators. But they're, I'm not going to call out names, but in particular, there's been one that has been very successful, and their original rollout model was strictly home delivery. They didn't, for the first, I believe, I want to say even the first year, they didn't have a single physical location. They rolled out delivery only, and it was, primarily during COVID, but they were wildly successful with it. So I do think that that's an amazing opportunity. And if you have a product that, speaks for itself and it's a super good quality product, I don't think you would have any issue, rolling out a delivery model.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting point. That's really interesting point. And I think another interesting thing that seems tied here, and we'll see more in the regulations, but for like this micro cultivator, for example, as long as you're a non-social equity applicant, there doesn't seem to be any Connecticut residency requirement. So for the micro cultivator license, if you're not going the social equity applicant pool, you could do this from another state. So if you're one of these folks waiting around, hey, when's New York gonna go? I want to do this, or is there a chance I'm going to get these New Jersey licenses? Am I already at the end of the line because they already opened up their application period? Or you're in Pennsylvania and you don't have access to this, but something you want to do, here's the ticket right here.
That is a really good point, Andy. Absolutely. That, I didn't even think of it from that perspective, but if you're just waiting around, or like you said, if you don't necessarily qualify under New Jersey's more strict micro licensing requirements, this might be an easy way in to Connecticut. So especially while we're waiting for New York, we don't know when New York's going to come online. So in the interim, why not try the next door neighbor, Connecticut?
Exactly. Get going.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Now, and there's also, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say there's something. Go ahead if you had a point on specifically on the micro cultivator.
No.
Okay, something else that I know is always a super sexy topic and everybody always wants to know about. How about consumption lounges or events? Has Connecticut addressed that at all? Like having a cannabis consumption event?
Yeah, so they're looking into it. They're not doing it yet. But what they're doing is they're evaluating it, and they're expected to provide a recommendation as to whether to allow consumption lounges and events by January 2023. So a year from now. And like you said, I mean, there is something really cool about, first, they're going to do the consumption lounges, which we're seeing other states do. But I really like the idea of events here too. Like, I thought that was like a neat other component that we're not seeing in Jersey, let's say. It's like, oh, you could have festival or whatever the case may be, where these events are allowing consumption and sale or whatever the case may be at it.
No, I think it's great. So it allows for like a pop-up one time, license or permitting process or something. So yeah. I'll be interested to see what Connecticut does with that.
For sure.
Now, are there anything in particular, like, I know we kind of touched on it, but is there anything else like super interesting that kind of stands out about Connecticut? I know we touched on this quite a bit, but like, as far as like, for like investors or financing?
Yeah, there's a couple things. Yeah, like there's some neat things kind of like hidden in the back of the legislation. Like, it's long, it's a few hundred pages long, but like right towards the very end, you like start seeing some neat things pop up, like there's big tax breaks Connecticut is providing to angel investors, who are interested in investing in these qualifying social equity businesses or other businesses. And you just get huge tax breaks like that can be written off for the next maybe 2 years or 3 years, I forget what it is, on any. Now, mind you, that they're your Connecticut income, your Connecticut returns. So
Right.
you'd have to have some business presence here and some tax liabilities here in order to take use of that. But that
Makes sense.
that is certainly like a really neat thing that they're doing to kind of advocate and push for people to invest in this. They're also like Connecticut's issuing, is authorized to issue bonds to provide low interest loans to social equity businesses. I think it's the initial round they're authorized to do is up to $50 million for loans and things like that. So, it seems like they're really, trying to make good on supporting these social equity candidates. Now, the issue will be like, okay, how quickly is that going to roll out? Like, is that going to be in time for this? Like, the bonds haven't even been issued yet. It's just authorized. So, that's in there, but I mean, who knows?
Right. Like rolling out a bond series and actually like, and then not only that, first getting the money from the investors and then finding a program in which to disseminate it to the social equity applicants.
Right.
Exactly. We'll see if that happens before they actually like when they need it most.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Like, is that going to
happen? The intention was good. We'll see. Maybe they'll be able to do it quickly, but we'll be keeping our eye on that because I mean, that's what we've seen in other states. Like it's great that they, other states have allowed for micro licenses and social equity applicants and giving priority, but really what's lacking is a lot of funding. Funding is really hard to get in the industry.
Yeah. And like this shows like why, even if like the intention's there, the complexity of providing that is it's hard, and like and if they're looking to get the markets going, it's like, and I've seen a lot of the legislators saying this, it's like, okay, we can't like sacrifice the good for the perfect. We just got to we got to roll it out, so it's like, so it's a matter of, okay, well, what can we do right now,
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't want to, because we are running close on time. So and we do still have to hit the municipality component, which is critical. Just touching really briefly on fees. The state did issue the specific fees associated with both the lottery, the provisional, and the final application. So those are, available on the state's website. But just real quickly, Andy, like, is there anything you noticed about the fees that they rolled out?
It's nothing too crazy. The fees are all relatively reasonable. The neat thing seems to be, the lottery entry fee ranges between $250 to $1,000, depending on which type of organization you're working with. Then there's a provisional licensing fee for like if you selected out of the lottery, and then that ranges from $500 to up to $25,000 for a cultivator. But generally, people are going to be more in the $500 to $1,000 range, it looks like. Then there's like a final licensing fee, which is around between $1,000 and $75,000, depending on what you're in. Usually the larger prices are mostly for cultivators. So, it's actually really reasonable. It's nothing super crazy, unless you're getting into the large scale cultivators, which if you're in that arena anyway, you have the money to handle that. So,
right.
And then the other interesting thing is if you're a social equity applicant, all those fees are cut in half. So you save 50% on all.
That's amazing.
Everything. Yeah, totally.
That's great that they've done that. Now, I kind of want to jump in with our last few minutes, kind of jump into what role the municipalities play in all this, because we've seen, that is a critical factor in some like New York and New Jersey. Is it such a critical factor here in Connecticut?
Yeah, absolutely. So the law permits municipalities to prohibit cannabis establishments within their jurisdiction or to reasonably restrict the number of cannabis establishments. So it's much like New York and New Jersey. Specifically, it seems like it's a bit more like New Jersey, where they can kind of outlaw any type Whereas it seems like New York they can't outlaw cultivators, but that still remains.
Yeah, they can't be like as selective, where New
Right,
Jersey
right.
allows a lot more discretion.
Yeah. That being said, so yeah, so you have to, so the towns play a huge role. And so you're gonna, when you're thinking about your application, you're gonna have to think about, you have to look into your town if they've opted in to allowing it, or opted out, and how many they're gonna allow, and then something that we help our clients do is figure out how to, like, who you should be talking to and things along those lines, and working through those issues. And so, establishing a good relationship with your town or wherever you're interested in is going to be a big part of the process. And, but that being said, the towns also can't forbid delivery of cannabis. So you can still deliver, delivery can still happen in any municipality in Connecticut.
Even if the county opts out, correct?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
even if they say no business can be located here and they opt out, delivery can happen to residents.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good feature. And that seems to be consistent with what happened in Jersey too.
Yes.
Just allowing it statewide, and the towns aren't allowed to, municipalities aren't allowed to intercede. And then another thing is, like, there are referendums are permitted. So on whether, like, the sale of marijuana should be allowed. So if the town opts out, all you need is 10% of the signatures of the voting populace in your town to change that around. So
interesting.
Yeah, so it's neat that there's that mechanism, that, like, direct democracy mechanism, that doesn't require you, like, having to convince the town council. Of course you can, that's an option too, going to the town council saying, hey, listen, we have our business, we think you should open it up, and there's definitely ways to do that. But you can also go right to the voters, and all you need is 10%.
My understanding is those towns are kind of contemplating those issues now. So, it's important to keep a look out for, like, if you do want to apply for one of these licenses, like, pay attention to your county, like you mentioned before, or your city, and see, like, are they having like town hall meetings about this? Maybe you want to go speak. Maybe you want to get your voice heard about why you need them in your local municipality, or, really advocating for them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very important point.
Yeah. Well, just, before we close, do you just have any, like, last minute general advice to those who are looking to get involved in the cannabis business in Connecticut?
Yeah, see, I think this is something we were just touching on, but, like, you're going to want to look at your local municipality, see what they're doing, see how many licenses they're giving out, and of what types, or see if they're open to discussing it further, to increasing those numbers or allowing. And then, so you're going to want to interface with them, find out what's going on, and you don't want to lock up your real estate too soon, unless you have, like, financial pockets deep enough to do so. So, like, part of these licenses allow you to do that. But if your town looks like they're definitely going to allow it, you think you're going to get a license, then go ahead and you can afford it, go ahead and get the real estate. But otherwise, you don't have to lock this up super fast. It gives you some time in the application process to do so. Let's see. Like, before you buy a building, you want to check with the local officials. You want to be looking for popular locations that are busy, like a lot of places along the train routes are going to be popular, like along the train routes from New York City, the commuting routes. That's going to be some hot spaces, some hot towns. Hartford, New Haven will be popular as well. So those are some really good markets to look into. You want to have a lot of traffic nearby, and that'll increase the value of your license as time goes on. And then the main piece of advice here, I think, is if you're interested in this, and this is something you want to do, you want to get in on this first lottery. And if possible, like, it would really help your chances if you can qualify as a social equity business or partner up with someone who does. But, like, if you can get in on this first lottery, then you're greatly increasing your chances of getting an application, because then you're not dealing with second, third, fourth round. If they even go that far, they might, they don't have to do more rounds if they don't want to, but like you're not doing with future lottery rounds where people have already gotten licenses, taken those licenses from the individual municipalities, and there aren't some left. So you're kind of fighting over the scraps. So if you don't want to be fighting over the scraps, now's the time to like, okay, get in at the ground floor, have the time built in where other businesses can't expand too rapidly. So it allows you like a little bit of comfortable room to grow and be there and kind of grow at more of a like a less frenzied pace, but in an environment that's a little bit protected.
All really, really, really good advice. Obviously, our law firm is here to help. So if you do have questions after watching this webinar, please feel free to reach out to us. You can check us out on our website, mrcannabislaw.com. You can also email me or the firm by reaching out to info@mrcannabislaw.com. We'd be happy to help you with your application questions, with representing your company and applying for one of these licenses. Seeing it as it is a lottery system, we are doing our fees a little bit differently for the state of Connecticut. We will, have reduced fees until, in the beginning process, just to get through the lottery portion. And if you win a license, then maybe a secondary fee structure. So you're not paying for the whole thing, knowing that you might not actually get awarded a license. So, even if you think, you might not be able to afford our firm, please feel free to reach out to us, because we are working with entrepreneurs. We do want to see your business succeed. So we'd be happy to work with you. Thank you again very much for participating. Andy, thank you as always for your expertise. I always learn something when we jump on these webinars from you. So I appreciate the guidance and support.
Oh, thank you, Amanda. Yeah, you're a big help. This was so appreciate you helping out today. And like, this was, good for both of us, it felt like, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for joining. And we'll, another quick announcement. We do have another webinar coming up on January 5th. It will be at 2 p.m. It is a Wednesday. We will be discussing recently New Jersey released all its application specifics, the actual application to apply, as well as all the specific application requirements. So we will be discussing those in detail on January 5th. So join us for that. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.